Hello, welcome to today's reading video. I just got back from the library and I figured I'd give a little bit of a library haul, then maybe share some of the books that I've been reading. Got 4 books. Probably the first one that I'm most definitely going to get to is Recursion by Blake Crouch. This is my book club book, so I do have to read it in the next few weeks, and I'm really excited for it because it sounds like a really fast plot based book. I've been reading a couple of very character driven books and I'm looking forward to switching it up. I think there's something related to time. Looking forward to just going into this blind and letting myself be surprised. Another one I'm really looking forward to is Vampires of El Norte. I tried listening to the audiobook, but I was getting a little more distracted than usual, so I thought it would lend well to maybe physically reading this. It's a very atmospheric writing style. It's also got a little bit of romance and seems like very moody. That's a carryover from my TBR last year, so I'm hoping that I can actually get to it this year. And then just to have a palette cleanser on deck, I've got Yona of the Dawn Volume 13. I wasn't really trying to prioritize this series this year, but it is such a good option to have on hand for something really lighthearted and really easy to read. I like having these kind of easy options available without having to commit to something too long, just to kind of keep my momentum going between longer reads. Speaking of longer reads, I've got The Dark Forest. This is the second installment after Three Body Problem in the trilogy, and it's long and chunky. And I will say the writing style in Three Body Problem was pretty dense, so there's a high chance of this either getting DNF'd or backburnered until further notice. I found the Three Body Problem really interesting, and I like that it was so different from anything else I've read, but I found the writing style a bit dry. I didn't really like the characters. So this is really like giving the trilogy another chance and seeing if maybe I click with it, and if I do, I'll continue, and if not, it's going back to the library. I've really heard really great things, particularly about the second installment, so I wanted to give it a shot. So that's the haul. I am currently in the middle of reading 3 books. I'm about halfway through each. So Local Heavens is an arc that I have through NetGalley. So it's coming out October 20th, I believe, by an author that I've seen here on YouTube. And I started following her because I really like the way that how she articulates her writing process. It's a cyberpunk retelling of Great Gatsby. I did recently read Blade Runner earlier this year, so I feel like I at least have a footing in that subgenre. And I really like the influences that she's taken from each of the titles, like the bones of the story of Great Gatsby being pulled in to commentate on inequality and wealth disparity and adding in the elements of racism, then also layering in these sci-fi elements in the world building that's very like Blade Runner-esque. A lot of the technology elements that she's incorporated I find to be very realistic seeming, like cool and interesting, but also I can see how she might have thought of that based on the way that we operate in our current world. Like it just feels like a realistic progression in our society. The writing really takes its time to build out the world and to build out in particular 2 of the characters, Nick and Jordan. I would say those are my favorite characters to read, and I like when they're together. They don't have a lot of time on page together in the first half, but I do like the scenes where they're together and the conversations that they're having. I do struggle a bit when Daisy or Gatsby are on page because I find those characters to be very tedious, but to be fair, that's also how I felt reading the original Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, so definitely not the author's fault. It's more of what those characters represent and how they act, and I just find them a bit annoying. Not to mention Tom, who is the most annoying, but thankfully he does not get a lot of page time. But yeah, I'm about 60% the way through that one. It's one of those books where I don't necessarily feel like I'm itching to pick it back up, but when I'm reading it, I do want to keep reading and have a harder time putting it down. I am also a little less than halfway through of Story of a New Name, which is, I think, a bit longer than I want this type of book to be. It's a very character-driven book, and I really do like the way the characters are explored. I also think that the writing style is quite easy. It kind of spoon-feeds a lot of things to you, where it tells you exactly like who's feeling what and why they do this and how they did that, and it's very clear. It's also very long, so not a lot really happens in each scene, and it's all very, very thoroughly explained. I'm hitting a little bit of a slump on that one. I might end up softy NFing it for now, but I'm gonna give it another week or so and see how it goes. I'm also halfway through Flatland, and this is a really interesting one. It is only 3 hours long on the audio. It is also quite old. I'll put the publication date on the screen. It is a story being told from the perspective of a character that lives in a two-dimensional world, trying to explain his world to a three-dimensional person. So you're getting all this history and lore and information about this world being two-dimensional, and basically all this geometry and all of the different people are different shapes, like specifically like triangles and rhombuses and various polygons. And all of the women are straight lines. So there's some very interesting societal norms that have been adopted, different laws and structures that have been established to accommodate their two-dimensional qualities. It's really interesting, and it's told in this very, very British dry humor kind of delivery, and it's really, really entertaining in that regard. There's no narrative as of yet. I think there will be a little bit of narrative. The first half is entirely just explaining to you what the two-dimensional world is like and why it's like that. Even though that sounds kind of boring, it is being told in a very interesting way. And then a couple other recent short reads that I've been able to start and finish while I've been in the middle of Local Heavens and Story of a New Name. I did pick up and complete The Family of the Vourdalak, which is a gothic vampire story that's only about like 15 to 20 pages, depending which publication you look at. That takes place in Serbia. That's where that term Vourdalak comes from. It is really, really interesting. I found it very fun to read just in a single sitting. It really cuts to the chase. I think it's actually the perfect length for a vampire story. You can't quite tell that they're vampires. Kind of like with Dracula and Carmilla. It does feel like it's got some similarities to those, especially for the setting in particular in Eastern Europe. It's also written around the same time, if not slightly before those two books, I believe. Again, I'll put the publication date on the screen here. For being that old, it was actually really easy to read, and yeah, the fact that it was only 20 pages, it kind of like goes through the story pretty quickly, and I still feel like there's a good sense of build up and tension even in that short amount of time. It kind of reminded me of Edgar Allan Poe's writing, where you have that build up and then everything kind of comes to a head really quickly and the drama all happens like on the last page. I really liked that one. I would really recommend it for spooky season. I also just finished over this past weekend listening to Letters to a Young Poet. This is also an older one. It was published in 1929, so I've been reading a lot of older short stories lately, and I'm really liking that. But this one was, out of everything I've talked about today, probably what I would recommend the most. So it's the letters from the author, who was at the time an established, more mature poet, who was writing and giving advice and kind of acting as a mentor towards a younger up-and-coming poet, and just giving advice on how to navigate the world as somebody who values creativity, who values self-expression, who values making time for their passions while also trying to balance the responsibilities of life. Because of that, it is very timeless and very easy to kind of adapt to whatever your said passion is. It touches a lot on relationship with self and your relationship with other people, and it's just told in a really, really beautiful, stunning way that really makes it feel more impactful. I really liked the philosophical content and life advice, but without it feeling trite or cheesy or repetitive to things I've heard and read before. Those are my recent and current reads, and this is what I've got coming up the pipeline. Let me know what your last current next read is and what you'd recommend. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more, just go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you for another video.